Welcome back. Coming up shortly, our first keynote interview with the Executive Secretary of UN Climate Change, Patricia Espinosa. First, though, I would like to welcome Nigel Topping. He is the UK's COP26 high-level climate action champion, and he's here now to say a few words about today's event.
Well, thank you to Rula and the FT team for partnering with us to host this fantastic event. I'm really looking forward to an amazing set of speakers and panels. We know that delivering the promise of the Paris Agreement is going to require a whole economy transition, and that solving this challenge will create economic and societal advantages for the countries, the cities, and the companies who emerge as leaders. We know that there's clear public support for a green recovery because people see what's in it for them: cleaner air, a just transition for their children, and the protection of nature that in turn protects their health, their homes, and their livelihoods. But this is at heart a massive economic transition, and the stakes are very high, which is why we talk about the race to zero. Within this decade, upgrading to a zero carbon future could create 35 million more jobs and $26 trillion of economic benefits if the opportunity is taken, compared with attempting to resuscitate the high carbon status quo. And the good news is that even in the face of COVID-19, the number of credible net zero commitments is growing at an exponential rate. The commitment by companies in the race to zero now cover over 2,000 companies. That includes 30% of the FTSE 100 and 15% of the entire global economy. And that doesn't include all the cities, regions, investors and universities also joining the race, and more of them joining every day. I can't keep up with the change in numbers. And of course, this is matched at a national level. We see more and more countries stepping up. Of course, Japan, South Korea and China last year, and now the US indicating that it will release its national plan, its NDC soon, joining the EU, UK, South Africa, Chile, and many others to signal its commitment to ratchet as promised as part of the Paris Agreement. But of course, private finance is going to play an absolutely critical role in the successful transformation of every sector to reach net zero by the 2040s. And this decade, where we have to halve emissions, is going to be crucial to make sure that we make the reductions where we can and set up the technology in those sectors which are a bit further behind to make the reductions in the 30s. And crucially, we know that, yes, the world has to deliver, the global north has to deliver the $100 billion promised as part of the international climate arrangements, but that also must be used wisely to leverage in private finance to reach the $4 trillion a year, which the World Bank estimates are needed in emerging and developing economies to invest in mitigation and resilience. So the finance sector is going to be at the heart of this transition. It must raise its ambition, own its leading role, and help to drive the many breakthroughs we need across all sectors. And the great news is, just yesterday, that we saw a huge breakthrough in the race to zero. We now have over 36% of assets under management from major asset managers committed to the race to zero, with 73 asset managers now in the race, with BlackRock and Vanguard amongst them, as announced yesterday. So those asset managers are mobilizing around the North Star of zero emissions and focusing on the short-term actions which businesses need to take to demonstrate they're on track and to make sure they're still in the race. And we can expect more news from other financial actors, the banks and the insurers in the weeks to come. So this is a critical decade for action, which means it's a decade of opportunity if taken, but risk if left behind. And we know that it's a time of disruption in almost every sector. Disruption follows this familiar pattern of the S curve. It takes forever to start and then takes off exponentially. So it's a time for new incumbents to emerge and old incumbents to reinvent their business models to make sure that nature and climate are at the heart of their business. This has been done before. We've seen it from horses to cars, from valves to transistors, from analog to digital. And always some people are left behind. They're caught in the hubris of thinking that they understand the sector better than everybody else and that they'll be able to manage the transition. The finance sector is no different. the pace of change is accelerating. Only a couple of weeks ago, I was in a session with the European Commissioner talking about their plans to phase out combustion engines for trucks in 2050. But that's already been trumped by the industry set, which says they're going to do it by 2040. So this accelerating pace of change will take everybody unawares who hasn't been in the race for some time and building their capability. So my bet is that this rate of change is going to accelerate all the way to Glasgow and beyond, and that Glasgow will be seen, COP26 will be seen as the moment when the world fully committed to net zero and really started to see the acceleration in action, financed by those who we're going to hear from for the rest of today. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Nigel Topping. Very interesting to hear those figures that Nigel just gave us there about the number of companies with net zero commitments now, 2,000 leading companies now in that position. And also interesting, as he said, just yesterday, new data coming out there showing that 36% of assets under management held by large asset managers also now on board with what Nigel is calling the race to net zero. So all of that incredibly encouraging, particularly after hearing the somewhat less encouraging views and news from our China panel. Our next speaker will have even more to say on all of this. We have our first keynote of the day when the FT's Environment and Clean Energy correspondent, Leslie Hook, is in discussion with Patricia Espinosa, the UN's top climate change official. So stay with us.